Jacob has stolen Esau's blessing. He is now told to go to the land of his mother to find a wife. Will his relatives welcome him with open arms? Will he actually find a wife? Let's find out. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Tally Talks Bible. I'm going to continue on through Genesis, and this is going to follow Jacob after he's left his mother, Rebekah, and father Isaac. He has stolen the blessing from his brother Esau through deception. And through another deception, he is now told to go to the land of his mother, to his uncle Laban, to find a wife. So let's pick up and see where his journey takes him. We're going to turn to Genesis 28, and we're going to pick up verse 10. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to the heavens, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. So with reading this, we can see that the Lord appears to Jacob like he's appeared before Isaac, how he's before, he's appeared to Abraham, and he's repeating the covenant that he's made with him. The very first covenant that was made was with Abraham, and he's extended that covenant to Abraham, to Isaac, and now he's extending it to Jacob. Even though Jacob's gotten to the point where he's at through deception, which, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that Abraham wasn't a saint either, nor was Isaac. These people are set up to do great things, but they still end up, falling short of what they need to do. They fail to listen and heed what the Lord says, and they try to take things into their own hands to make things better for themselves instead of relying and having faith that the Lord will take care of them. So we're going to continue on, verse 18. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. Pouring oil on something kind of like anointing. We'll hear that later on through the Bible. It's basically a way of saying this is something that is holy. He called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Now, it's stated here, I will give you a tenth. That's usually, a tenth is a tithe. When we tithe, it's usually a tenth. It doesn't really say that he will continue to give a tenth, or if it's just a tenth here in this instance. But it's like it's talking about tithing. All right, now we're going to move on to chapter 29. And Jacob is now starting to enter the land of his relatives. Laban is still in charge, and Laban is Rebekah, Jacob's mother. It's her brother. Now, if we remember, Isaac did the same thing. Well, excuse me, rephrase that. Abraham sent a servant for Isaac to Laban to find a suitable wife among the relatives to bring back as a wife for Isaac. So this is repeating the same thing. Here we are again with the repetition that I've been talking about. We're going to see a lot of the same sequences that happened with the servants of Abraham that went to find a wife for Isaac. It's going to repeat itself in this chapter. So let's start. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country where 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "From Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said, "and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," he said, "the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture." "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then he will water the sheep." Okay, so here's a few things here. The servant of Abraham met Rebekah at a well. Here we see now Rebekah's son is meeting a relative of Rebekah's at a well. This could be, potential suitor for him. It's making callbacks. Same thing that's happening now happened in the past. But there's a little difference here. It wasn't common for women of the time to be shepherds. That was seen as more of a man's duty, so this was a little uncommon for her to even be there. I'm going to continue on, and let's see what Jacob thinks of this woman that's come to the well. While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and the son of Rebekah, so she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him into his home. And there Jacob told him all the things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." So here we're seeing that he's welcomed by his uncle, and it's obvious that Jacob here is very happy to see he's among people that are related to him that he feels he can trust. It doesn't state that he really gives them the reason for why he's there. I mean, we all know how he ended up there, but it just says that uh, it just tells him. He says Jacob told him all these things, but it doesn't really state what all he told him. Now we're going to continue here, and things get a little crazy, and there's more deception at play, and it's not unusual. We keep seeing things like this over and over, and we'll see more as we continue. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me, what is your wages should be?" Excuse me. Tell me what your wages should be. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah. The name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had lowly figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Now, this wasn't uncommon. Again, I've mentioned this before. They're technically cousins. And back then, just, trying to keep the bloodline the same, this wasn't uncommon back in these times. Now, remember, these are ancient times. This stuff happened. It was common. Today we think about it and we're like, "Oh, gross, that's weird." But back then, it happened all the time. And so now he's sit here and he's worked 7 years. It's basically a bride price. Laban's like, hey, you come work for me. You work these 7 years. You may have my daughter's hand. And Jacob does it. And because he loved her so much, it seemed like it just flew by, like he wasn't even there that long. So, continues on to say, then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is complete, and I want to make love to her. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. And Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as an attendant. Okay. Now we're seeing here that they had a big feast, and you know that's what they did. They had a big technically not really a wedding, but it was a gathering of people, and his uncle Laban gave him Leah, which was the older sister. And we're going to find out and see that we're talking about the same custom again. The firstborn should be given the right. Like in the case of usually, a woman in these times, the firstborn daughter was to be wed first. Just like, they think back in the story of Esau and Jacob when Jacob wanted Esau's birthright because Esau came first. So he was afraid that he was going to be left out. So Laban is doing the same thing here by saying, my daughter Leah should be first. But that's not what the agreement was. Jacob agreed to work for the hand of Rachel. So Laban has now deceived him by covering his daughter Leah in place of Rachel and giving him to Jacob. So let's find out what's going to happen. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? Laban replied, it is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work. And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. So now Jacob has worked for 14 years for the hand of Rachel. And if you notice, it's saying that they were given servants. This wasn't uncommon. I'm guessing that, wealthier families, they had servants, of course. But this one was specifically, for Rachel and Leah. I would think it was more like, too, like when they were having children, they would help with the children and things of that nature. And speaking of children, that's what the next little bit here is going to talk about. And it's going to get crazy again. We're going to see some more callbacks within these next verses and this chapter. We're going to finish up with chapter 30. And then that'll be the part 1 of this, and I'll do a part 2, which will be about some more deception. So let's continue on here with verse 30. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Now, if you've read into the Bible at all past this, or familiar with the Bible, you know these names, these children, bear significance later on in the narrative of the Bible. But here you're seeing that Leah is wanting Jacob's affection, his attention, but it seems all his focus is on Rachel, which, in a way, that's what he said from the beginning, that he wanted Rachel. But, through deception, he was given Leah, and it doesn't say this, but, in this time, once everything's done and a man and a woman lie together, that they're supposed to stay together. You know, it's they don't divorce and all this stuff wasn't really a thing back then. You didn't just get with somebody and that was it. If he was to leave her or exile her, even though it happened in Abraham's time, it wasn't seen as a good thing to do, especially among relatives. So I'm going to start up chapter 30 here. It says, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. Jealousy's bearing its head again. Where do we remember this from? Give me children or I'll die. Jacob became angry with her and said, am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children? Then she said, here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her, so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her. There it is, right there. Do we remember what happened between Abraham and Sarah and Hagar? I just mentioned earlier about how Abraham had sent a child and the mother away. That's who I was talking about. Hagar and Ishmael were sent into exile, but was still blessed by the Lord and were not without. It wasn't like they were just sent out into exile and died. The Lord still watched over them, even though the child of Abraham, Ishmael, was conceived through means other than them believing in the Lord. They were taking it into their own hands. So now here we're seeing the same thing again happening. But this time it's a little different. This time it's not, a woman being jealous of a slave that was married to her husband that had a kid. And actually, they're not going to be married here. They're going to be considered what's called a concubine. With a concubine, the bride price isn't, it's not a thing. There's no bride price. It's just, here you are, you can have children with this woman. So let's continue on. So she gave him her servant, Bilhah, as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me and has listened to my plea and given me a son. Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, I have had great struggle with my sister and have won. So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, what good fortune. So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, how happy I am. The woman will call me happy. So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought back to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Ishkar. So here we are where these two sisters are vying for the attention of their husband. They're in competition with each other. Now, it mentions these mandrakes here. Mandrakes were used or were thought to be to help with fertility. So I guess if you were to, they got big leaves and like a violet flower on them. So I guess they're going to like use it like kind of like a tea would be my assumption. I'm not exactly sure how they consumed it, but they may have just ate it outright. Um, so it was used to help with fertility. That's what they thought it was for. So obviously they're in this battle of, I'm having this child, I'm having that child. They've even given their servants to Jacob. So Jacob now has 4 wives, and he's having children through all of them. So let's continue on here. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor, because I bore him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later she gave birth to a daughter, and her name was Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and he listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, May the Lord add to me another son. So this whole chapter is just back and forth between these two sisters. And obviously some time has had to pass between this for them to have all these children. And then there's a mention of Dinah, just the one daughter, and she's going to come back up later on, and that's probably why they even mentioned her at all in this little genealogy here, is because she plays a role later on in the story. So we're going to finish up this last little part here, and then I'm going to call it, and then I'll make a part 2. Jacob's flocks increase. So now we're going to talk about this is actually a moment where Jacob says that God is with him. Back then, sheep were used. If you had a lot of like livestock, sheep mainly was the big thing. They used it for food, for clothing. They even drank the milk. So the more sheep you had, the more wealthy you were. So let's start. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, Send me on my way so I can go back to my homeland. Give me my wives and children, for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you. But Laban said to him, If I found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed you. The Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, Name your wages, and I will pay them. Jacob said to him, You know how I have worked for you, and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may excuse me, but now when may I do something for my own household? What shall I give you? He asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied, but if you will, do this one thing for me. I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. That same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob. While Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flock, Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flock. When they came to drink, when the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus made separate flocks for himself, and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong ones went to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own a large flocks and females and male servants and camels and donkeys. So he took all. It was considered like all the if the blemish spots, whatever. If it wasn't a certain color, that they weren't considered good. So he took all of them and found out a way to make them stronger, keep them healthier, and that was the agreement that he made with Laban, that I will take all the ones that are spotted and speckled. So because of that, his flocks grew and grew and grew, and he became very wealthy because of it. Okay, so that's going to be part 1 of this. Part 2 will come shortly after, and it's going to be dealing with Jacob trying to go back to his homeland. And there's going to be issues that arrive because Laban doesn't want him to go. But that's for next time. So thank you for your time. And always, God bless.